All right. The bloodiest conflict that the world has ever seen. An estimated 80 million casualties happened as a result of this war. World War II is one of the biggest events in modern history, not only because of the amount of death and devastation that was caused by it, but also because of the many geopolitical ramifications that resulted from the conflict. Because of how important it is to events today, it is important to understand how World War I and the Treaty of Versailles, along with the world policy at the time, helped Hitler rise to power and essentially cause World War II. It is also important to understand everything that had to happen in order for World War II to come to an end. So the Treaty of Paris. Treaty of Paris ended World War I. Basically, Germany had to take responsibility for the entirety of the war. They lost land. Their military had to be shrunk. They couldn't have an air force. And they had to pay ramifications to Britain and France to pay the cost of the war. Germans didn't like it. It was basically a national embarrassment to them. It wasn't something that they like. So when Hitler came along and promised an end to the Treaty of Versailles, it really helped him gain a lot of momentum with the working class citizens of Germany. So when Hitler eventually did come to power, he started violating the treaty. He started building up the military again. He sent troops into the Rhineland, an area of Germany that was demilitarized, a border area between Germany and France that was demilitarized. He stopped paying the war reparations that Germany owed, and the Allies basically did nothing to stop him from doing any of this. He pushed his luck even further when he decided to invade or occupy Austria, which, again, the world community did nothing to stop him. They just kind of walked in and said, "You're part of Germany now." The only time the world really acted was when Hitler wanted the Sudetenland, which is in an area that borders Czechoslovakia and Germany, an area with ethnic Germans in it. And so Hitler said he wanted this, and so there was a conference that Germany, France, and Germany attended. Czechoslovakia was not part of it. And Hitler signed a paper saying, "If you give me this, I will stop going after land and being power hungry," all that stuff. So Neville Chamberlain, with the paper in hand, came back to Great Britain and said, "Peace for our time." That was his big thing, was peace for our time. He was wrong. Hitler did not stop there. In fact, a little later, he actually invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia, and the world again did nothing. Around this time, Hitler and Stalin started having secret negotiations, and eventually, much to the shock of the rest of the world, signed a non-aggression pact, basically saying that we'll divide Poland in half and we won't attack each other. This was the last straw as far as Hitler taking land was concerned. This is the stand that Britain was going to make and France was going to make. Here, saying if Germany invades Poland, we will declare war. And so eventually, when Hitler did invade Poland, Germany and France declared war, and it was the start of World War II. Then, the rest of the war happens. A lot of stuff happens, and then the end of the war has to start somewhere. And to me, it really starts with Hitler deciding to invade Russia, which, if you look back through history, doesn't work. Napoleon tried it, it didn't work. He actually tried it twice, didn't work either time. So Hitler invades Russia, it starts to work, and then winter happens, and he starts to lose. Russia starts pushing him back. And then the Allies invade up through Sicily, through Italy, not get them out of the war, and then D-Day happens. So we start, liberating France from the Germans. And as Hitler sees U.S. closing in from the west and Russia closing in from the east, his last-ditch attempt is to punch a hole through the U.S. British line at what results in the Battle of the Bulge, which creates the big dent in our line. But it doesn't work. It doesn't break through. Hitler loses. The Nazis lose. And as the Russians are invading Berlin, Hitler commits suicide and Germany loses the war, surrenders. In the Pacific theater, the turning point was really the Battle of Midway. After that, the Japanese Navy didn't really have as much power or presence in the Pacific, and we really started to turn the tide. We started doing the island hopping campaign, which hopping from one important island to the next. And then eventually we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrenders, and World War I is over. Or World War II is over, my bad. World War II, a conflict that really shaped the world that we know today. By the end of it, US emerges as a global superpower alongside of Russia. The world enters a nuclear age with a policy of mutually assured destruction. And if it wasn't for this, how harsh the Treaty of Paris was, and maybe if Great Britain and France took a harsher stance against Hitler when he started going against the Treaty of Paris, maybe World War II might not have happened, but it probably still would have. Maybe, it's really hard to tell. But it did happen. And from the start, Germany and the Axis powers were going to lose. It wouldn't have ended any other way, really. Through the determinants of our troops, the Allied troops, through D-Day and Midway and all the battles in between, Axis powers were defeated, and the history we know today happened.